The protagonist of today's tale was ensnared by one of the chief entrances of these genies and demons, which is the mirror. She would often gaze into it, enamored by her own visage. Still young at just 18, she possessed a beauty that captivated her, to the extent that she would perform every action in front of the mirror. It had even reached the point where she would converse with herself before it. On this particular day, discord brewed between her and her mother. Retreating to her chamber, she sat before the mirror, engaging in self-dialogue. Initially perturbed by those who would disparage her, she later calmed, even embracing the notion of a creature from an unseen realm consoling and comforting her. From that moment forth, she relished solitude, seeking it out for extended periods. During one of her solitary ventures into her chamber, curiosity and desire for understanding overwhelmed her. Seated before the mirror, she spoke to whoever might listen, beseeching them to reveal themselves. It was then that a whisper echoed in her ear, warning her of the dreadful sight to come. Undeterred, she challenged the entity to assume a normal guise. Indeed, it manifested as a handsome young man of ethereal allure. Their encounters multiplied, and her attachment to him deepened until she proposed marriage, to which he assented. They wed and clandestinely met in her chamber at night. However, her health soon deteriorated, prompting a visit to the physician who discovered an enigmatic anomaly near her womb. Upon returning home and divulging her condition to her husband, she learned she was pregnant with a male fetus. Fearing disgrace, she was relieved when he pledged to support any decision she made. Seeking refuge with a close friend, she recounted her tale, her swelling abdomen not escaping notice. Together, they sought the aid of a physician specializing in abortions and radiology. Astonishingly, the fetus was 5 months old, a duration incongruent with their recent marriage. Yet the physician informed her of severe fetal deformities, leading to the termination of the pregnancy. For the next 5 years, she rebuilt her life until her husband fell ill and perished. She remarried, bore children, and savored the joys of motherhood. Then, out of the blue, a peculiar visitor arrived, his grotesque appearance striking fear into her heart. He revealed himself as the son she had attempted to abort, left to the care of a witch who subjected him to cruel experimentation until his family rescued him. As if that weren't shock enough, he delivered another bombshell. Her jinn husband was still alive, having been imprisoned and subsequently freed. Bound, she awaited judgment in the jinn court, accused of betrayal. Her husband, however, ordered her release, though she returned home to find her family gone. Afflicted with inexplicable seizures and wounds, she sought counsel from various religious figures to no avail. Desperate, she turned to a charlatan, whose session ended tragically as she fell and perished from a fatal brain hemorrhage. Recently, I decided to emancipate myself from my family and purchase a house to dwell in solitude. I relocated to a rural area in Texas, where the houses are remarkably affordable. I've been working and saving since I was 15 years old, and now, at the age of 25, a graduate of the College of Commerce with a major in business administration, I've managed to secure a comfortable job with a very good salary. While acknowledging that my alma mater is modest and its future not particularly bright, thanks to my connections and a bit of networking, I was able to find rewarding employment with a handsome salary. My house is nestled between 2 others, one to my right and the other to my left. The neighbor to my right is a respectable individual, approximately 30 years old, whom I encountered only once initially and have not seen since. He is decent, as I mentioned, but not sociable, and frankly, the type I prefer among neighbors. As for the neighbor to my left, I was unaware of who resided there until a few days ago when I heard a knock on the door upon returning from work. Opening the door, I found a kind elderly woman standing with a plate of cookies, a gesture that genuinely delighted me. Remember when I mentioned that my preferred type of neighbor was one who offers sustenance? I've had a change of heart. My preferred type of neighbor is now one who extends culinary generosity. She smiled warmly as she introduced herself as Maria, and after exchanging pleasantries, she handed me the plate of cookies, to which I responded with a grateful smile and heartfelt thanks before she departed. I couldn't shake off an eerie feeling about her appearance. Her skin seemed unnatural. But perhaps that's simply due to her advanced age? I savored the entire plate of cookies, marveling at their delicious flavor, though I couldn't discern the recipe that produced such delectable treats. Nevertheless, they were the most delightful cookies I've ever tasted. After finishing my meal, I decided to rest for a while. The next morning, I woke up with intense stomach pain, a consequence of indulging in the entire large plate of cookies by myself. Despite their irresistible taste, I couldn't resist them, hence, I informed my workplace that I was unwell and unable to come in that day. As time passed, the pain worsened, even though I was mostly confined to my home, doing nothing strenuous. I opted to lie in bed and minimize movement in an attempt to alleviate the discomfort. Then, I heard another knock on the door. It was Maria once again, this time bearing a large apple pie. Although I attempted to maintain composure and assure her that I was fine, I couldn't bring myself to tell her that I was suffering from stomach pain due to her cookies. I accepted the pie graciously and thanked her, savoring the sweet aroma. I decided to have only a slice this time, but alas, the pie was irresistibly delicious, and I ended up eating a substantial portion. Regrettably, my stomach pains intensified. I struggled to move due to the excruciating pain, and around 3 o'clock, things took a turn for the worse. I began experiencing severe gas and collapsed to the ground, unable to control the release of gas. I drifted off to sleep where I lay. The next morning, I heard another knock on the door. Unable to move due to the intensity of the pain, I heard Maria's voice from behind the door, implying that my lack of appreciation for her cooking was the cause of my suffering. She then erupted into hysterical laughter, unnerving me further. After what seemed like an eternity, she managed to force the door open with a sharp object in her hand, a large kitchen knife. Approaching me with the knife in hand, she began to inflict wounds on my thigh, all the while murmuring with delight, "I exist solely for this purpose." She then proceeded to lick the blood off the blade in a terrifying manner, still laughing maniacally before eventually leaving. The pain was unbearable, compounded not only by my stomach, but also by the injury to my thigh. Struggling to reach my phone, I managed to call for help, informing them of my stabbing and excruciating pain. They arrived approximately 10 minutes later, but I was too exhausted and in agony to recall the subsequent details accurately. Upon regaining consciousness and being deemed fit to speak, I was interviewed by the police. The most terrifying thing I've ever heard in my entire life was their revelation. Maria, the kind elderly woman, had murdered 20 people and injured 29 others. Yet, that wasn't the most terrifying part. The truly horrifying realization was that her name wasn't Maria. It was Daniel. With your camera, Daniel. A 40-year-old serial killer kills them, skins them, makes costumes from them, and wears them to change his appearance. This is the reason why I clearly doubted its appearance when I saw it for the first time. And finally, something they told me. All the eaters I ate contained parts of Dan.
The onset of nocturnal thirst compelled him to forsake the solace of his warm bed and journey towards the kitchen refrigerator. As he approached, the soft hum of the appliance seemed to grow into a low, foreboding groan. Upon its unveiling, the light flickered eerily, casting long, twisted shadows across the floor. He discerned the faint echo of footsteps trailing behind him. Swiveling on his heel, his heart skipped a beat as he beheld not his wife but a gaunt figure, adorned with an unsettling, too-wide smile, beseeching him to partake in hydration. Yielding to her uncanny entreaty, he watched, his hands trembling, as she imbibed with unnatural slowness while concurrently peeling a banana with deliberate jerky motions, which she then proffered to him with a bone-chilling grin. His response was one of mirthless laughter, a hollow sound in the cold kitchen air, coupled with a flash of fear for his unexplained forgetfulness. He promised aloud to engage in dental hygiene measures once more prior to slumber, his voice quivering as he attributed this newfound vigilance to the eerie consumption of the banana. A tense interlude. He reconvened in their shared sleeping quarters, only to discover his wife, previously thought in the kitchen, now ensconced in a state of deep, unnerving repose, as if she had never left the bed. Prompting her awakening, he queried the expeditiousness of her slumber. She responded languidly, asserting her prior somnolence and the subsequent nature of his intervention. His countenance retained its joviality as he commended her aptitude for the dramatic arts, to which she responded with a counterclaim of having maintained her stationary position throughout. The erstwhile smile adorning his visage waned as he recollected her recent activities. Hastening to the kitchen, he encountered the residual evidence of the consumed banana. A sense of trepidation pervaded his being as he reached the illumination and retraced his steps to the marital chamber, where apprehension began to take root. Traversing the living quarters, he espied his slumbering spouse, prompting his ingress and subsequent accusation and physical altercation under the pretense of playful jesting. Her ocular rubric conveyed bewilderment as she articulated her nocturnal occupancy, precipitated by their unresolved discord from the preceding eve, which had culminated in her solitary retreat to the communal space. His incredulity manifested in a threat to invoke maternal intervention, with a refraining from physical aggression. Marching towards the guest quarters with the intent of telephonic discourse, he was intercepted by the maternal figure, whose vocal inquiry and rebuke underscored the deleterious impact of his actions on familial harmony, particularly poignant given the late hour. The instrument of communication slipped from his grasp, precipitated by the shock of maternal censure, and abruptly darkness enveloped the scene. The